When my son and his wife heard the doctor say I had only 4 days left, they held my hand, smiled, and said, "Finally, only 4 days. Your house and your money are ours now." After they left, I called the cleaning lady. "Help me, and you'll never have to work again." Before we continue, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hear my story. If you're comfortable, let me know where you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. Now let me tell you my story. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and despair. I'd been lying in this bed for 3 days, hooked up to machines that beeped rhythmically, monitoring every breath, every heartbeat. The fluorescent lights above me buzzed constantly, a sound that had become the soundtrack to what everyone believed were my final days on Earth. My name is Beatrice Chen. I'm 74 years old. I spent 40 years as an accountant before I retired, managing other people's money with precision and care. I raised my son James alone after my husband died when James was only 8. I sacrificed everything to give him a good life, to send him to college, to help him start his business. And now, lying in this hospital bed with what everyone thought was terminal liver failure, I was about to discover exactly what all those sacrifices had meant to him. The door opened and I heard familiar voices, James and his wife Vanessa. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing steady. The doctors had told me that morning that I was fading fast, that I probably wouldn't make it through the week. They'd called James to come say goodbye. "Mr. Chen, Mrs. Chen," that was Dr. Harrison's voice, grave and sympathetic. "I wanted to speak with you about your mother's condition." "How long does she have?" James asked. His voice sounded tight, emotional. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he did care. Maybe I'd been wrong to worry about how distant he'd become over the years. 4 days at most, Dr. Harrison said quietly. "Maybe less. Her liver is failing. We've done everything we can, but at this stage it's just a matter of time." "I'm so sorry." 4 days, that was Vanessa. Her voice was odd, strained. "I'll give you some time alone with her," Dr. Harrison said. "She's been in and out of consciousness. She might not respond, but many patients in this state can still hear their loved ones. Talk to her, say what you need to say." The door closed. I heard footsteps approaching my bed. I kept my eyes closed, kept my breathing steady and shallow like I'd been doing for the past hour. Then I felt James take my hand. His palm was warm against mine, and I heard him speak. Finally, his voice was soft, almost a whisper but clear. "Only 4 days, Mom. Your suffering will be over soon." My heart lurched. Something about his tone was wrong. It wasn't grief, it was something else. Then Vanessa spoke. Her voice equally quiet but unmistakable. "And that house and all that money will finally be ours." The words hit me like a physical blow. I fought to keep my breathing steady, to keep my eyes closed, to show no reaction, but inside, my world was shattering. James squeezed my hand. "We've been waiting so long, 4 more days and we can finally move on with our lives. That house is worth at least $800,000 in this market," Vanessa whispered. "And whatever she has in investments, James, we're going to be rich." I know, I just wish it had happened sooner. These past few years waiting, pretending to care about her problems, visiting her, it's been exhausting. Well, it's almost over. 4 more days of playing the grieving son and then we're done. They stood there for another moment, and I could feel their eyes on me, making sure I wasn't conscious, wasn't hearing any of this. Then James let go of my hand. "Come on, let's get out of here. The smell of this place is making me sick. Should we talk to the doctor about funeral arrangements?" "Not yet. Let's wait until she actually dies. But yes, we should start planning. Something cheap, cremation probably. No point wasting money on a big funeral." "Agreed. The less we spend, the more we keep." They laughed. Quietly, but they laughed. And then they walked out of my room, leaving me alone with the horrible truth I'd just discovered. My son, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd sacrificed everything for, was waiting for me to die, not metaphorically, literally counting down the days. And he was happy about it. I kept my eyes closed for another 5 minutes, making sure they were really gone. Then finally I opened them. The ceiling tiles above me blurred as tears filled my eyes. Not tears of sadness, not yet. These were tears of rage, of betrayal, of a pain so deep it felt like my chest was cracking open. How long had James felt this way? How many of his visits had been motivated by love? And how many had just been him checking to see if I was still alive, still standing between him and his inheritance? I thought about the past 5 years. Ever since I'd retired, James's visits had become less frequent, More perfunctory. He'd ask about my health, about my finances, about whether I'd updated my will. I thought he was just being practical, responsible. Now I understood. He'd been monitoring his investment, making sure his future payday was still secure. The door opened again, and I tensed. But it was just Dr. Harrison returning with a clipboard and a strained expression. "Mrs. Chen, are you awake?" I looked at him, and something in my face must have conveyed what I was feeling because he stopped short. "Mrs. Chen, I need to talk to you about something important. About your diagnosis." "4 days," I said, my voice hoarse. "You said I have 4 days." Dr. Harrison sat down heavily in the chair beside my bed. "Mrs. Chen, I made a terrible mistake. We made a terrible mistake. Your test results were mixed up with another patient's. You don't have terminal liver failure." I stared at him. "What? You have a severe infection?" "Yes. Treatable with antibiotics. You'll need to stay in the hospital for another week, maybe 2. But Mrs. Chen, you're not dying. I'm so sorry for the error. I just realized it when I was reviewing the charts. I came to tell your son the good news, but I saw him leaving. Should I call him back?" The room seemed to tilt. I wasn't dying. The diagnosis was wrong. I was going to live. Which meant James thought I was dying, thought he only had 4 days to wait, when in reality I could live for another 10-20 years. And he was happy about the 4 days. "Mrs. Chen, should I call your son? He should know." "No." The word came out sharp, decisive. "Don't call him. Not yet. But he thinks you're dying. He should know the truth." "I need time to think, Dr. Harrison. Please. Just give me a few hours before you tell anyone." He looked confused, but nodded slowly. "Of course. I understand this is a lot to process. Take all the time you need." After he left, I lay in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. James thought I was dying. He was relieved, excited even. He was planning how to spend my money before I was even in the ground. And I had the power to show him exactly who he really was. That evening the cleaning lady came in to service my room. I'd seen her several times over the past few days. Rosa, according to her name tag. She was maybe 55 with kind eyes and gentle hands. We'd chatted briefly during her previous visits. Nothing deep, just pleasantries about the weather, about how terrible hospital food was, about her grandson who was starting high school. She'd been kind to me, not because she had to be, not because she expected anything, just because that's who she was. "Good evening, Mrs. Chen," she said warmly, starting to empty the trash bins. "How are you feeling today?" I watched her work for a moment, making a decision that would change both our lives. "Rosa, I need to ask you something. How would you like to never have to work another day in your life?" She stopped, trash bag in hand, and looked at me with concern. "Mrs. Chen, you shouldn't talk like that. You need to rest, save your energy." "Rosa, come here. Sit down, I need to tell you something." She hesitated, then pulled the visitor's chair closer to my bed and sat, her hands folded in her lap, looking worried. "The doctors told my son today that I'm dying," I said. "They said I have 4 days left, maybe less." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Mrs. Chen, I'm so sorry. The diagnosis was wrong, Rosa. I'm not dying. I have a treatable infection. I'm going to be fine." She blinked, confused. "But that's wonderful. Why do you look so upset?" "Because my son doesn't know the diagnosis was wrong. He thinks I'm dying." And Rosa, when the doctor told him I had 4 days left, do you know what my son said? She shook her head slowly. "He said finally. He said my suffering would be over soon, and then his wife said that my house and my money would finally be theirs." They laughed. Rosa. They stood in this room holding my hand and they laughed because they only had to wait 4 more days to inherit everything. Rosa's hand flew to her mouth. "No. Your own son? That's impossible." I heard every word. They thought I was unconscious, but I heard it all. "Mrs. Chen, I don't know what to say. That's horrible. That's evil. I need your help, Rosa. I need to do something and I need someone I can trust. Someone who won't judge me for what I'm about to do." "What are you going to do?" I looked at her steadily. "I'm going to fake my death." Rosa stared at me for a long moment. Then she laughed nervously. "You're joking." "I'm completely serious. The doctors think I'm dying. So does my son. I have 4 days where everyone expects me to die anyway. Why not use that time to find out the truth about who James really is?" "That's crazy, Mrs. Chen. You can't fake your own death." "Why not? I have money. I have connections. I have a doctor who feels guilty about the misdiagnosis and might help me if I ask. And most importantly, I have 4 days where everyone already thinks I'm dying. But what would that accomplish? It would show me the truth. Rosa, right now I only heard what James said when he thought I couldn't hear him. If I fake my death, I'll see what he does after. How he acts. What he says at my funeral. How quickly he tries to claim my money. And then what? And then I'll know for certain what kind of man my son has become, and I'll be able to make decisions about my estate with absolute clarity. Rosa shook her head. Mrs. Chen, if your son is really that bad, just change your will now, leave him out of it. You don't need to fake your death. But I need to know, Rosa. I need to see it with my own eyes. I've spent 48 years loving that boy, raising him, sacrificing for him. If I'm going to cut him out of my life, out of my will, I need to be absolutely certain, no doubts, no second guessing. Rosa was quiet for a long moment. What would you need from me? I need you to help me stage everything. To be my witness, to document what James does and says. And Rosa, if you help me do this, I will pay you $100,000. Whether it works or not. Her eyes went wide. Mrs. Chen. I mean it. You've been nothing but kind to me. You work 3 jobs to support your grandson. You deserve better. Help me and you'll have enough money to quit cleaning hospitals. You can spend time with your grandson. You can rest. Why me? Why not your lawyer or a friend? Because James knows all my friends, knows my lawyer, but you're invisible to him. He's probably walked past you a dozen times and never even noticed you exist. That's the kind of man he is. You're perfect for this because he'll never suspect you're involved. Rosa's hands twisted in her lap. This is insane. Probably, but will you help me? She looked at me for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. Yes. If your son really said what you claim he said, then he deserves whatever happens to him. I'll help you. I reached out and squeezed her hand. Thank you, Rosa. You have no idea what this means to me. What do we do first? First, I need to call my lawyer. Gerald Patterson. He's been my attorney for 30 years. He's also one of the few people I trust completely. Rosa handed me my phone from the bedside table. My hands were shaking as I dialed Gerald's number. He answered on the 3rd ring. Beatrice? How are you? I heard you were in the hospital. Gerald, I need your help with something unusual. Something that might sound crazy, but I need you to hear me out. Of course. What's going on? I'm going to fake my death. There was a long silence. Beatrice, are you on pain medication? Because that sounds like... I'm completely lucid, Gerald. Let me explain everything. I told him about the misdiagnosis, about what James and Vanessa had said, about my plan to fake my death and see how James really reacted. When I finished, Gerald was quiet for a long moment. Beatrice, that's the most insane thing I've ever heard. But will you help me? Another pause. I've never liked James. I've always thought there was something calculating about him. The way he asks about your estate, about your assets. It's always felt wrong to me. So yes, I'll help you. This is absolutely insane, but I'll help you. Thank you, Gerald. We'll need Dr. Harrison's cooperation. Can you get him on board? I think so. He feels terrible about the misdiagnosis. And I think he'll want to help expose what James really is. All right, let me think about how to structure this legally. We'll need documentation of everything, video evidence if possible. And Beatrice, we should change your will before you die. Just in case something goes wrong. What do you mean, change my will? Right now, James inherits everything, correct? Yes. He's my only child. Everything goes to him. And after what he said, do you still want that? I closed my eyes. It hurt even to think about it, but the answer was clear. No, I don't. Then we'll draft a new will. Tonight, I'll come to the hospital first thing tomorrow morning, and we'll make it official before you die. Who do you want as your beneficiary? I looked at Rosa, who was sitting quietly in the corner still processing everything that was happening. Rosa Martinez. I said, the hospital cleaning lady who's been taking care of me. She and her grandson. Rosa's head snapped up. Mrs. Chen. No. Yes, I said firmly. Gerald, draft a new will leaving the bulk of my estate to Rosa Martinez and her grandson. Set up an education trust for the boy. Leave something to the hospice center where my husband died. They were wonderful to us. And leave James exactly $1. $1? Gerald asked. So he can't claim he was accidentally forgotten. I want him to know I specifically chose to leave him almost nothing. Beatrice, are you sure about this? This is a huge decision. I'm absolutely sure. Rosa has shown me more genuine kindness in 3 days than James has shown in 3 years. She deserves this. And Gerald, James needs to understand that cruelty has consequences. All right, I'll draft the documents tonight. I'll be there first thing tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. with witnesses. After I hung up, Rosa was staring at me with tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Chen, you can't leave me your estate. That's too much. I'm just a cleaning lady. I don't deserve. You deserve kindness, Rosa. You deserve security. You deserve to stop working yourself to death to support your grandson. And most importantly, you deserve this more than James does. James has never appreciated what he had. Maybe losing it will teach him something. I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me do this. Say you'll be my witness. I will, I promise. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying James's words in my head. Finally, only 4 days. The relief in his voice. The excitement. My own son, wishing I was dead. I thought about all the years I'd raised him alone. His father, my husband Richard, had died of a heart attack when James was only 8 years old. I'd been 34, suddenly a widow with a young son to raise. I'd worked 2 jobs to support us, to pay for his school, his activities, his dreams. When James wanted to go to college, I'd used my savings to help with tuition. When he'd wanted to start his own consulting business, I'd given him $50,000 as seed money. When he'd gotten married to Vanessa 10 years ago, I'd paid for half the wedding. And through all of it, I'd never asked for anything back. Never expected repayment. That's what mothers do for their children. You give because you love them, not because you expect return on investment. But apparently James had been keeping track, not with gratitude, but with impatience. Waiting for me to die so he could cash in. The next morning at 8 a.m. sharp, Gerald arrived with 2 other people I didn't recognize. Witnesses for the will signing. Dr. Harrison came too, looking nervous. Mrs. Chen, your lawyer explained what you want to do, Dr. Harrison said. I want to be clear, this is highly irregular. I could lose my license if this goes wrong. Nothing will go wrong, I assured him. We stage my death on day 4, exactly as you originally predicted. You pronounce me dead. We document James's reaction. Then 3 days later at the will reading, I make my grand reappearance. The worst that happens is I look foolish. Or James has a heart attack from the shock. At 48 and healthy, unlikely. Dr. Harrison, my son thinks I'm dying. He's happy about it. Don't you want to see the truth about what kind of person he really is? Dr. Harrison sighed. Yes. I do. Because if he really said what you claim, he deserves to be exposed. All right, I'll help you. But Mrs. Chen, if anything goes wrong, if your health actually deteriorates, I'm pulling the plug on this operation immediately. Fair enough. Gerald spread the new will documents across my hospital bed table. Beatrice, these are the new terms. Read them carefully before you sign. I read through the pages. Gerald had been thorough. The house worth $800,000 would go to Rosa. My investment accounts totaling $1.2 million would go to Rosa. My life insurance policy, $500,000 would go to Rosa. My art collection worth approximately $300,000, according to the last appraisal, would go to Rosa. There was also a $200,000 education trust for Rosa's grandson, structured so it could only be used for educational expenses. And a $500,000 donation to Mercy Hospice in Richard's name. James would receive $1. The total estate value was $2.8 million. I'd had no idea I was worth quite that much. Richard had been an engineer, and he'd invested wisely. I'd been an accountant, and I'd never touched his investments. Just let them grow. The house had appreciated significantly over the decades. James thought he was inheriting maybe $1 million at most. He had no idea about the full extent of my assets, and now he'd never know. This is my will, I said firmly. This is what I want. I signed the documents. The witnesses signed. Gerald notarized everything. It was legal, binding, and irrevocable unless I chose to change it again. Rosa stood in the corner, crying quietly. When everyone else had left, she came to my bedside. Mrs. Chen, I still can't believe you're doing this. Believe it, Rosa. Now we have 3 days to prepare. James will visit every day, I need you to document everything he says, everything he does. Can you do that? I'll use my phone, I'll record video, audio, whatever you need. Good. And Rosa, be careful. If James realizes what we're doing, this all falls apart. I'll be invisible. That's what I'm good at. Over the next 3 days, I gave the performance of my life. I grew weaker, or appeared to. I spoke less, kept my eyes closed more. The nurses and doctors who weren't in on the plan thought I was genuinely declining. James visited every day, right on schedule, and every day, Rosa was there, cleaning invisible, recording everything. On day 2 I pretended to be asleep while James talked to one of the nurses in my room. Rosa captured it all on video. How long does the estate settlement process usually take? James asked the nurse casually as if he were just making conversation. I'm not sure, sir. That's really a question for a lawyer. Right. Of course. It's just, I want to make sure everything is handled properly. My mother worked hard for what she had. I want to honor that. The nurse nodded sympathetically, not realizing she was listening to a man counting his inheritance before his mother was even dead. On day 3, Vanessa came with James. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing shallow. Rosa was in the corner, emptying trash bins, her phone propped up and recording. God, this room is depressing, Vanessa said. I can't wait until this is over. Tomorrow, James replied. The doctor said tomorrow is the day. And then we can start making plans. I've been looking at kitchen renovation ideas. Marble countertops, new appliances, maybe knock down the wall between the kitchen and dining room. You want to renovate my mother's house? It'll be our house, James. We need to make it ours. That awful 1970s kitchen has to go. You're right, we'll gut the whole thing. Update everything. It'll increase the property value. They talked about my house like it was already theirs. They discussed which furniture they'd keep, which they'd donate, which they'd sell. They talked about whether to rent it out or move into it themselves. Through it all, I lay perfectly still, breathing slowly, playing dead while they carved up my life. That night, Rosa showed me all the footage she'd captured. Watching it was like being stabbed repeatedly. Every casual comment about my money, every excited discussion about spending my assets, it was all documented, all proof that James saw me not as a mother but as an obstacle to wealth. Tomorrow is the big day, Rosa said. Are you ready? I'm ready. Dr. Harrison will stage the code. You'll record James and Vanessa's reaction, and then we wait 3 days for the will reading. Mrs. Chen, what if James actually seems sad? What if he cries? Then I'll know the tears are fake. Rosa, I heard what he said. There's no coming back from that. The next morning, day 4, Dr. Harrison came to my room early. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this? I'm sure. All right. I've arranged for the crash cart to be nearby. We'll stage a code. I'll pronounce you dead, and then we'll move you to a private room in the administrative wing where you can recover in secret. Your son will never know. What about the other staff? Won't they realize I'm not really dead? I've cleared it with the hospital administrator. She's the only other person who knows. Everyone else will think you've passed away and been moved to the morgue. Thank you, Dr. Harrison. Thank you for showing me what a monster your son is. He deserves what's coming. At 2 p.m., James and Vanessa arrived. I was ready. Monitors were beeping steadily. I looked appropriately terrible, pale, weak, barely conscious. They sat in the waiting room while Dr. Harrison examined me. At 2:47 p.m. he pressed the code button. Alarms blared. Nurses rushed in. James and Vanessa jumped up in the waiting room, watching through the window as the medical team swarmed around my bed. Rosa was in the hallway, her phone recording everything. Dr. Harrison called the code. Time of death, 2:53 p.m. The monitors went silent. The nurses stepped back. The crash cart was wheeled away. And through the window I could see James and Vanessa, waiting, watching. Dr. Harrison walked out to the waiting room, his face grave. Rosa followed, still recording, pretending to push a cleaning cart. Mr. Chen, Mrs. Chen, Dr. Harrison said softly. I'm so sorry, she's gone. James's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Shock first, then something else. Something that looked like relief, though he tried to hide it. She's dead? James asked. Yes. I'm very sorry for your loss. Vanessa touched James's arm. Honey, I'm so sorry. But Rosa's camera caught what happened next. The moment Dr. Harrison turned away, Vanessa smiled, just for a second, just a quick flash. But Rosa got it on video, and James took a deep breath that looked more like relief than grief. "Thank you, doctor," James said, his voice appropriately solemn. "This is so hard, but at least she's not suffering anymore. Would you like to see her? Say goodbye?" "In a moment. I need to just process this." They sat in the waiting room for a few minutes. Rosa, still playing her role as cleaning lady, moved closer with her cart, staying in earshot. "We should call the funeral home," Vanessa said quietly. "Already have one picked out. I'll call them this afternoon." "What about the will? When do we meet with the lawyer?" "I'll call Gerald tomorrow. The sooner we get this started, the better." "James, try to look sadder. People are watching." "I am sad. She was my mother." "You don't look sad, you look relieved." "I am relieved. She was suffering. Now she's at peace. And we're about to be rich." They laughed quietly. Actually laughed. Rosa caught it all on video. After they left, the nurses wheeled me to a private room in the administrative wing. I stayed there for the next 3 days, recovering from my death. Gerald came to visit the day after my death. "Beatrice, I watched the video Rosa sent me. Your son is worse than I thought." "I know. The will reading is scheduled for 3 days from now. James has already called me twice, asking about the process. He's very eager." "I bet he is." "Beatrice, are you sure you want to go through with the reveal? You could just let him think you're dead, let him find out about the will change that way." "No. I want to see his face. I want him to know I heard everything. I want him to understand that his cruelty cost him everything." "All right. The will reading is at 10 a.m. on Friday. I'll have James and Vanessa come to my office. Rosa will be there as a beneficiary, Dr. Harrison as a witness. And you'll make your grand entrance." "Perfect." Those 3 days in hiding were strange. I was dead, according to the world. The hospital had issued a death certificate, a false one that would be quietly corrected later. James had arranged for a funeral home to collect my body, actually a weighted bag that looked convincing in a body bag. I watched the news coverage. My obituary ran in the local paper. James had written it, and it was full of beautiful words about what a wonderful mother I'd been, how much I'd loved him, how I'd sacrificed everything for his happiness. All lies, pretty lies designed to make him look like a grieving son. Rosa showed me the video of the funeral home pickup. James had been there, looking appropriately somber. He'd even shed a few tears. But the moment the funeral home staff turned away, his face had cleared. The tears stopped like he'd turned off a faucet. "He's a good actor," Rosa said. "He's had years of practice," I replied bitterly. On Friday morning, I got dressed carefully. I chose a deep blue suit, the one Richard had always said made me look powerful. I did my makeup, styled my hair. I looked like myself again, not like a dying woman in a hospital bed. Gerald's office was downtown, in a tall building with marble floors and expensive furniture, the perfect setting for what was about to happen. I arrived early and hid in Gerald's private back office. Through a crack in the door I could see into the conference room where the will reading would take place. At 10 a.m., James and Vanessa arrived. They were dressed in black, playing the part of mourners, but I could see the excitement in their eyes, the barely suppressed eagerness. Rosa was already there. Sitting quietly in a corner, James barely glanced at her. He had no idea who she was or why she was present. Dr. Harrison arrived a few minutes later, nodding at James and taking a seat. Gerald entered the conference room carrying a folder. "Thank you all for coming. I know this is a difficult time. We appreciate you handling this so quickly," James said. "My mother always spoke highly of you." "She was a remarkable woman," Gerald replied neutrally. "Before we begin, I should mention that Mrs. Chin made some changes to her will recently." James tensed. "What kind of changes?" "We'll get to that. But first, there's someone who wanted to be here for this reading." "Who?" Vanessa asked, looking around. "There's no one else in the family." "Not family, no." Gerald looked toward the back office door. "Beatrice, would you like to come in now?" I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and walked into the conference room. The silence was absolute. James's face went white. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. Vanessa actually screamed, jumping back in her chair. "Mom?" James finally managed. "But you died." "We saw the doctor said. The diagnosis was wrong," I said calmly, taking a seat at the head of the table. "I don't have terminal liver failure, just a treatable infection. I'm going to live, James, probably for many more years." "But we saw you die, the monitors, the code, The doctor was staged, Dr. Harrison said, with Mrs. Chen's full cooperation and consent. James stared at me like I was a ghost. Why would you fake your own death? Because I needed to know the truth, I said. When Dr. Harrison told you I had 4 days to live, James, do you remember what you said? His face went from white to red. You said finally. My voice was cold, each word a hammer. You said my suffering would be over soon, and Vanessa said that my house and money would finally be yours. You both laughed. You held my hand and you laughed because you thought you only had to wait 4 more days to inherit everything. Mom, that's not, we were upset. We didn't mean. I heard every word, James. You thought I was unconscious, but I heard everything. I heard how relieved you were that I was dying. Vanessa found her voice. This is insane. You can't fake your own death. That's illegal. Actually, it's not, Gerald interjected. Mrs. Chen never filed for death benefits, never tried to commit insurance fraud. She simply allowed people to believe she was dead for a few days. Unorthodox, yes. Illegal, no. Why? James asked, his voice breaking. Why would you do this? To see who you really are, I said. I needed to know if what I heard was real or just a moment of weakness. So I watched you over those 4 days. I saw how you asked the nurses about estate settlement timelines. I heard Vanessa planning to renovate my kitchen. I watched you laugh after the funeral home took away what you thought was my body. I nodded at Rosa, who pulled out her phone. Rosa documented everything. She played the video. James asking about estate settlement. Vanessa discussing kitchen renovations. Their relieved faces after Dr. Harrison pronounced me dead. Their quiet laughter in the waiting room. James watched the video with growing horror. Mom, we were just stressed. We didn't mean any of that. You meant every word. I said. James, I spent 48 years raising you. I gave up everything to give you a good life after your father died. I paid for your education, your business, your wedding. I loved you unconditionally. And you've been waiting for me to die so you could spend my money. That's not true. Then explain the video. Explain what you said when you thought I couldn't hear you. He couldn't. He sat there, mouth opening and closing, trying to find words that wouldn't come. Gerald cleared his throat. Perhaps we should proceed with the will reading. Yes, I said. Let's. Gerald opened the folder. Mrs. Chen executed a new will 3 days before her staged death. The terms are as follows. The house at 8047 Maple Street, valued at approximately $800,000, is left to Rosa Martinez. James's head snapped up. What? Who's Rosa Martinez? I am, Rosa said quietly from her corner. I'm the hospital cleaning lady who took care of your mother. The investment accounts, totaling $1.2 million, are left to Rosa Martinez, Gerald continued. The life insurance policy, $500,000, is left to Rosa Martinez. The art collection, valued at approximately $300,000, is left to Rosa Martinez. You can't do this, Vanessa shrieked. We're your family. That money should be ours. There's also a $200,000 education trust for Rosa's grandson, Gerald continued calmly, and a $500,000 donation to Mercy Hospice in Richard Chen's name. And what about me? James asked, his voice barely a whisper. Your son, what did you leave me? $1, Gerald said, to ensure you couldn't claim you were accidentally omitted. The conference room was silent except for Vanessa's ragged breathing. You can't do this, James said again, but his voice had no strength. I'll contest it. You're clearly not in your right mind. Faking your death proves you're mentally unstable. I have full medical documentation of Mrs. Chen's mental competency, Gerald said. Multiple evaluations confirming she's of sound mind. Plus the video evidence of your behavior shows exactly why she made this decision. Family doesn't smile when you're dying, James, I said quietly. Family doesn't plan renovations before the funeral. Family doesn't laugh when they think they only have to wait 4 more days. You're giving $2.8 million to a cleaning lady instead of your own son? I'm giving my estate to someone who showed me genuine kindness. Rosa held my hand because she cared, not because she was calculating her inheritance. That's worth more than blood relation. This is insane, Vanessa spat. You're a vindictive old woman. You faked your death, you manipulated everything, and now you're punishing your son for a few words said in a moment of stress. Those weren't stressed words, Vanessa. They were honest words. James finally showed me who he really is. And I made my decision based on that truth. James stood up abruptly. I'm contesting this will. I'll fight this in court. I'll prove you're mentally unstable. Go ahead, Gerald said calmly. But I should warn you, any beneficiary who contests this will forfeit their entire inheritance, including that $1. I don't care about $1. Then you're free to contest. But James, I've been a lawyer for 40 years. I've seen will contests, with video evidence of your behavior, with medical documentation of your mother's competency, with witnesses to your excitement about her death. You will lose badly, and it will cost you tens of thousands in legal fees for nothing. James stared at me, his face a mix of rage and disbelief. How could you do this? I'm your son. And I'm your mother, I replied. The mother you waited to die. The mother whose death made you happy. The mother whose house you planned to gut before her body was even buried. Did you think there would be no consequences for that? I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You meant every word. And James. That's what hurts most. Not the words themselves, but knowing they were true. Vanessa grabbed James's arm. Come on, we're leaving. We'll find a lawyer who can help us. Good luck with that, Gerald said. The will is ironclad. They stormed out, Vanessa still shouting threats. James looking back at me one last time with the expression I couldn't read. Betrayal? Rage? Regret? I didn't care anymore. After they left, Rosa approached me slowly. Mrs. Chen, I still can't believe you did this. I still can't believe you left everything to me. You earned it, Rosa, not by being related to me, but by being kind to me when I needed kindness. What will happen now? James will probably try to contest the will. He'll lose, but he'll try. And then, hopefully he'll finally understand that actions have consequences. Dr. Harrison stood up. Mrs. Chen, I need to ask, was it worth it? The risk, the deception, all of this. I thought about it, yes, because now I know the truth. No doubts, no second guessing. I know exactly who my son is, and I can spend whatever time I have left without wondering if he really loves me or if he's just waiting for me to die. That's a sad truth to live with. It's sadder to live with false hope. 3 months later, James did contest the will. Just as Gerald predicted, he lost. The judge reviewed the video evidence, the medical documentation, the witness statements. The ruling was harsh. The judge called James's behavior reprehensible and a betrayal of the parent-child relationship that this court finds deeply disturbing. James was ordered to pay court costs. The $1 inheritance was revoked entirely. Rosa and her grandson moved into my house. There was plenty of room for all of us. She'd quit all her jobs and was spending time with her grandson, helping him with homework, taking him to soccer games. Watching them together reminded me of what family was supposed to look like. I also started volunteering at the hospital where I'd been a patient. I visited elderly patients who had no family, who lay in those rooms alone. I held their hands. I talked to them. I made sure they knew someone cared. Because I'd learned something important through all of this. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by who cares about you when you're vulnerable. Rosa had held my hand because she was kind. James had held my hand while counting days until my death. 6 months after the will contest, I was invited to speak at a community center about elder abuse and financial exploitation. My name is Beatrice Chen. I told the audience of mostly elderly people. I'm 74 years old. 6 months ago, my son waited for me to die. Not metaphorically, literally counted down the days. I told them the whole story. The misdiagnosis, what James had said, my decision to fake my death, the will change, everything. I faked my death to prove what I suspected in my heart. I said that my son saw me as an obstacle, not a mother, and it broke my heart to be proven right. But I learned something valuable. I learned that we get to choose who deserves our love, our trust, our resources. Blood relation doesn't entitle anyone to those things. Kindness does, respect does, genuine care does. I gave my fortune to someone who earned it through simple human decency, and I have no regrets. An elderly woman in the front row raised her hand. But don't you miss your son? I miss the son I thought I had, I replied honestly. But that son never really existed. The real James was the one who smiled when he thought I had 4 days to live. That James I don't miss at all. After the presentation, several people approached me with their own stories. One man's daughter had stolen his credit cards. One woman's son had forged her signature on a reverse mortgage. Another woman's grandson was pressuring her to change her will while she was still alive. What should I do? The woman with the grandson asked. He's family. I don't want to hurt him. Has he hurt you? I asked gently. He's not mean to me. He's just persistent. He keeps saying I should add him to my bank accounts, to my house title. He says it's to make things easier when I pass away. And does he visit you except when he wants to talk about money? Her silence was answer enough. Then you know what to do, I said. Protect yourself first. Family who truly loves you will understand boundaries. Family who's using you will fight them. 1 year after I'd faked my death, I was sitting on my porch in my house that would soon belong to Rosa when I was actually gone. When a car pulled up, James got out. I watched him walk up the path, noting how much older he looked, tired, worn down. Hello, James. Mom. He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, not coming closer. Can we talk? I'm listening. I've been in therapy, working through some things, and I wanted to say I'm sorry for what I said, for how I acted, for waiting for you to die. Are you sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught? He flinched. Both, honestly, but mostly sorry I did it, because you were right. I'd stopped seeing you as a person. I'd started seeing you as an obstacle to the life Vanessa and I wanted. What happened to Vanessa? We're divorced. She wanted me to keep fighting the will, to spend everything we had on lawyers. When I said no, when I said I understood why you changed it, she left. I'm sorry. Don't be. You were right about her too. She didn't love me. She loved what she thought I was going to inherit. We sat in silence for a moment. I don't expect you to forgive me, James said finally. I don't expect you to change the will back. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did. I understand why you did what you did, and I'm trying to become a better person. That's good, James. I hope you succeed. Can I visit sometimes? Not for money, not for inheritance, just to talk. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to say no, to keep the wall up, to protect myself from further hurt. But another part of me, the part that had raised him, that remembered him as a child, that part said yes. You can visit, I said carefully. But James, I won't change the will. Rosa and her family are my beneficiaries now. That's not going to change. I know. I don't want it to change. What you did, giving everything to someone who earned it through kindness, that was the right thing. It's taken me a year to see it, but I see it now. We'll see if you still feel that way in a few years. I will. Because Mom, I finally understand something. I spent so many years thinking about what I'd get when you died. I never thought about what I'd lose. I lost you while you were still alive. And that's worse than losing an inheritance. After he left, I sat on that porch for a long time, thinking, was he being genuine, or was this another manipulation? I didn't know, but I did know that the will wasn't changing. My estate would go to Rosa, to her grandson, to the hospice that had cared for Richard. James would have to prove himself through years of changed behavior, not through one apology. 2 years after I'd faked my death, I was still healthy, still active, still very much alive. Rosa's grandson had graduated high school with honors and was starting college on full scholarship, though the education trust I'd set up would help with expenses. Rosa had opened a small bakery with part of the money I'd given her as an advance on her inheritance. She was happy, thriving, living the life she'd never been able to afford before. And James? He visited once a month. We had coffee, talked about his life, his new job, his therapy. Slowly, carefully, we were rebuilding something, not the old relationship that was dead, but something new, something based on honesty rather than obligation. I didn't know if I'd ever fully forgive him, but I'd learned that you could have a relationship with someone without giving them everything. You could love someone while still protecting yourself. The will remained unchanged. Rosa would inherit, and if James had really changed, he would understand why. 3 years after I'd faked my death, I gave another talk at the community center. This time, James was in the audience. I'm 77 years old now, I told the crowd. 3 years ago I faked my death to expose my son's true feelings about me. It was the most painful thing I've ever done, but it was also the most liberating. Because I learned that you don't owe anyone your resources just because they're related to you. You don't have to finance cruelty. You don't have to reward people who treat you badly. They say you can't take it with you when you die. That's true. But you can decide who gets it. You can choose to give your resources to people who earned them through kindness, through care, through genuine love. I gave my fortune to a cleaning lady who held my hand when I was sick. Not because she was related to me but because she was kind to me, and I've never regretted that decision. After the talk, James approached me. That was powerful, Mom. Did it hurt to hear? Yes, but I deserved it. Everything you said was true. Are you still in therapy? Still going? Probably will be for a while. It's helping. Good. Mom, can I ask you something? What? Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? Really forgive me? I thought about it carefully. I don't know, James. What you did, what you said. It broke something in me, but I'm glad you're trying to be better. I'm glad you understand what you did. That's more than I expected. It's less than you deserved. Yes, it is. We walked to our cars together, and for the first time in years it felt almost normal. Not the old normal, but a new normal. Careful, boundaried, but real. I'll see you next month? James asked. Yes. Coffee on the third Tuesday. I'll be there. As I drove home to the house I shared with Rosa and her family, the house that would be theirs when I was actually gone, I thought about the journey I'd been on. I'd faked my death to learn the truth. The truth had been devastating, but it had also been liberating. I'd discovered that my son had been waiting for me to die. I'd discovered that a stranger could be more family than blood relations. I'd discovered that kindness was worth more than any inheritance. And most importantly, I'd discovered that at 77 years old, I was stronger than I'd ever known, strong enough to face terrible truths, strong enough to change my will and my life, strong enough to choose who deserved my love and my resources. James had said finally, only 4 days when he thought I was dying. But I'd gotten years instead. Years to live on my own terms, to reward kindness, to teach the world that elder abuse has consequences. I was Beatrice Chen. I was 77 years old. I'd faked my death to expose my son's greed. And I'd never been more alive. My name is Beatrice Chen, and I want you to remember this. You can't take your money with you when you die, but you can choose who gets it. Choose people who love you for who you are, not what you have. Choose people who would be sad at your death, not relieved. Choose people who hold your hand out of love, not calculation. Because in the end, that choice is the most powerful thing you have. And I used mine wisely.